class, new teacher, new school, new home maybe. Are you going through any of these things at the moment with your child and finding your life is complete chaos? Transitions and change are so tough for our children, but I've got some hot tips, so stay with me as I guide you through them. I used to find that a certain time of year, it might start about April and go on till September, our life went into complete chaos. And it took me a really long time to work out the reason for this was transitions and change. That summer term at school is absolutely full of them. And if you have a neurodivergent child, you might find your life completely exploding. It was so bad for me and my child that I actually stayed in a bad marriage for far longer than I should have done, because I figured if she can't cope with a new teacher each year, how the hell is she going to cope with a new parenting setup and a new house? So I stayed in this bad marriage because I was terrified, basically. But there was a silver lining to this story, because that extra time actually gave me the opportunity to learn from the educational transitions. And I ended up applying those same strategies to my home and the divorce. And you never guess what? I was completely gobsmacked, because when that big family change came, she actually coped with it really well. I have a workshop coming up, and I'm going to put a link to that in the description, where I'm going to share with you the strategy that I used to help my daughter go through not just the educational changes, but also home and family changes. But right now I've got 3 hot tips, my best tips for coping with transition and change, that I'm going to share with you right now so you get some support straight away. So the first one is work with the school. So lots of schools will have strategies in place for helping children move up in year to the next class, or to a phase transition, whether that's nursery to primary school to secondary school, and so on. So they'll have a strategy, but those strategies are often designed for neurotypical kids. And our kids often need a little bit more, or in some cases, like my daughter, a lot more. So if that sounds like your child, then get in touch with the school's SENCO, that's a Special Educational Needs Coordinator. Ask for a meeting and get this booked in as early in the summer term as you can, so you have some time to prepare, and talk through some strategies where you can help smooth over that transition a little bit more. As I said, they're probably going to need a little bit more than the rest of the kids, and working together with the school, hopefully you can find ways to do that. My second top tip is social stories and visual timetables. So when my daughter was younger, I spent so much time drawing stick figures and realizing how terrible my artwork was, to help her deal with change that are coming up. Now, if you're not familiar with social stories, they're basically graphic representations, a bit like a comic, that help a child understand the change that is coming up for them. I'm going to put a link in the description to the National Autistic Society, because they've got some good resources on social stories that you might find useful. But basically, yeah, they're just a visual representation of the change that is coming up. So create those, sit down with your child, talk through them, and then put them up on the fridge so everyone can see them. What I would find is that my daughter I'd see her hovering around the fridge, and so that would give me another opportunity to go through it again. And you're basically preparing them, warming them up for the change that is coming. Now she's a little bit older, she doesn't really need those social stories so much, but we still have a visual timetable for moving from the term time to the school holidays. And that's very common for neurodivergent kids, to find that transition quite difficult. They're going from a highly structured environment like school into this more free-flowing holiday period. So I just have this visual timetable. It's on the fridge again, and then everyone knows what's happening. So invest in a dry whiteboard or whatever method you like best, and making sure that everyone knows what's going on and when. I think you will find that that really helps to deal with some of that discomfort from the transition and change. My third hot tip is timing. Now, any therapist watching this might just shriek in shock when I say this, but I didn't used to give my daughter much notice of a change that was coming up at all. For example, when we went on holiday, I would literally tell her at the moment I was getting the suitcases out to pack that we were going away. That's because I learned that she could not cope with the build-up. She couldn't cope with too much notice because for her it was just more time to worry. But what I did make sure I had was that when I told her, I had all those resources like the social story ready, so that I told her and I could catch her full, basically. I could pick her up with the support materials, and we found that that worked best. Now, obviously not always possible for you to tell a child at the last minute. For example, the transition from year 6 to secondary school, people were talking about that months in advance. And also she'd seen all the year 6s the year before leave. She'd been to the Leavers show. She knew what was coming. So in those circumstances, it wasn't possible. So we just had to muddle through. And again, I just made sure I had things like social stories and other things that you'll hear about in my workshop to help her through those. Now, this is going to be different for different children. Maybe your child does need a lot of advance notice. Certainly that is what most therapists will tell you to do. They were quite shocked when I said I didn't do that. But you know what works for your child best, just like I knew what worked for mine. And for her, it wasn't giving her too much notice, but maybe your child does need a lot of notice. You might have to just suck it and see, trial and error with this one to see what works best with your child. But certainly if giving them lots of notice isn't helping, just try it. Try next time if holidays can be a difficult transition as well. Try just telling them the night before. It can be difficult because you obviously have to give stum, and it's easier with little children than it is with older children who are just a bit more kind of conscious of what's going on around them. But yeah, just play around with it and see what works best. As I said, I've got loads more tips. I've got a workshop coming up. You can sign up for that. The link will be in the description. And as I said, at that workshop, you also have the benefit of coming to me with the change and transition that you're currently facing and get some one-to-one tips on that. If you're watching this once the workshop has passed, that's the joy of the internet, we can watch this at any time, then I can still help. I'm also going to put a link in the description where you can get 20 minutes free parenting coaching with me to have a chat about that change, transition, or any other issues that you're facing with your child that you'd like to get some support with. So I hope for now that some of those tips will help you in the moment. This is a tricky time of year. There are so many transitions now. So give that a go and see how you get on. Good luck.